Hey, Tom, I had to call. I listened to you frequently, and you're fundamentally wrong on just about every philosophical topic you engage in. And primarily, you're an advocate of government solutions or making government bigger. And what that does is that the money or the corruption goes to where the power is. And when government has power, it's no surprise that we have all this billions of dollars being spent by lobbyists, and there's more lobbyists in Washington today than during the Bush administration.
Yep.
And as a result, we have competition, or we have corruption, where the politically connected interests get the money and the favorable regulatory treatment, and the main guy on Main Street doesn't get anything.
Yep. No, I'm not disagreeing with you, Bob. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Now, let me just ask you a question. If you are right that where the money is, there is power, and where the power is, there will inevitably be corruption, how are you going to stop corruption within the largest corporations in America?
You make them accountable to consumer preferences and business preferences rather than political
but if they have monopolies, they don't give a rat's patootie about consumer interests or political interests. You know, in France, pretty much everybody in France, for less than $40 a month, has 100 MIP broadband, has over 100 channels of television, and can call any unlimited telephone calls on their cell phone or their home phone to over 30 countries in Europe. Why? Because the French government intervened in the marketplace and said whoever owns the wire or whoever owns the G3 line cannot restrict anybody else from carrying content over it. In other words, they forced competition. And so you've got hundreds of small companies in France competing for the broadband business, for the TV business, for the phone business. And that's why the average American spends over $300 a month for what the French get for over 40. And the French companies are all profitable, by the way. So the question again, monopoly, the essence of monopoly is to destroy competition. That's why companies form monopolies. That's why there's 3 companies that own more than 80% of our agriculture in the United States, or the growth agriculture, grain agriculture, things like that. 7 companies that control most of agriculture. You've got 5 companies now that control more than 80% of our media. You've got 3 companies that control most of our manufacturing, large manufacturing. You got 3 or 4 companies that control most of the computer business. And on and go. And what the mandate of these companies is to prevent competition. The banks, we went from the big 10 banks down to the big 6 banks now that are too big to fail. So how do you prevent them from being corrupt?
First of all,
if you don't intervene in the marketplace? Say that again?
First of all, you got to look at, I'm going to answer that question in 2 parts. First of all, the way they became a monopoly was it was facilitated by government, because these guys have all the money, so they go to government and they say, look, provide us a favorable regulatory regime, and regulations always benefit the big guy. The little guy doesn't have the wherewithal to handle these regulations. So that's the first step in creating a monopoly.
That is actually very often true. What you find is that there are basically 2 kinds of regulations, and the majority of regulations on the books are the kind that you describe, where lobbyists have gone to government. You know, the classic example is the guy who used to work at, I believe it was Monsanto, when they developed genetically modified products during the George Herbert Walker Bush administration, went to work for the USDA, wrote the regulations to regulate those so that basically only Monsanto could get into the business, and then left the USDA and went back to Monsanto, or went back to a lobbying firm that worked for Monsanto. And that happens over and over and over again. We need to put a stop to that, but how do you put a stop to that?
I just told you, the government facilitates this at the expense of
So how do you stop the government from doing that?
Well, you reduce the size and scope of government. You want to give them more power. You think by giving them more power, we're not going to get more.
How do you stop the government from being corrupted by monopolies who worm their way into government and get laws passed that benefit only the monopolies?
Well, here's how you do it, Tom. I'm going to give you a little secret to all your audience. You take the money and the power out of the hands of the government. You restore it back to Main Street, back to the people.
Bob, that sounds really, really nice. So you and I are going to decide what the regulations should be about genetically modified organisms?
What we decide is through consumer preferences. Every single day we get, or every hour, every minute, if we're in a store, we get to vote.
Actually, you don't. Actually, you don't, Bob. You walk through that store, and most of the products in that store are made by fewer than 50 companies.
And we know why. We just established why, and that's because of
and
government.
I am telling you that if you do not want to have monopoly in the United States, the only solution, the only way you can prevent monopoly, and this is This is like capitalism 101. This is Adam Smith. His whole argument, the phrase "the invisible hand" that he was talking about, was an argument in favor of government preventing monopolies. And I mean, go back and read Wealth of Nations, 1776, and it has held true all the way up until today. If you want to prevent monopolies, you're going to have to do what Teddy Roosevelt did back in the 19-teens when he broke Standard Oil up into 29 companies. What Richard Nixon and Jimmy Carter did when they broke AT&T up into 9 companies. What stopped in 1982? In 1982, Ronald Reagan said, "We are no longer going to enforce the Sherman Antitrust Act." It had been on the books at that point 101 years. He said, "We're no longer going to enforce that law." And what did we get? We got Michael Milken. We got mergers and acquisitions mania. We got all these guys becoming multi-billionaires and hundreds of thousands, millions of people losing their jobs because hundreds of smaller companies got bought up by one company, which no longer needed 100 bookkeepers, so it laid off 99 of them. No longer needed 100 middle managers, so it laid off 99 of them. The corporate America became a little more efficient, but America as a nation and the working class of America became a lot less efficient. And that's because government stopped doing its job of protecting us from big corporations. And here's the flaw in your logic, Bob. And you pointed out the flaw in the logic of anybody who says big government is wonderful. I'm not saying that. I've never said that. But the flaw in your logic is that the only countervailing power to organized capital is organized people. And that can take one of two forms. It can either take the form of an organized and educated populace, as Thomas Jefferson talked about, which is called the government of the United States of America, or it can take the form of a democracy within the workplace, which is called a union. I know of no other ways that you can balance the power of organized capital. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. What Adam Smith said and what Theodore Roosevelt said was incomplete. Every time we've had laws against monopolies in this country, those products and services that those supposed monopolies were providing had been going down for years. To create a monopoly is an unsustainable model. First of all, the company that wants
Tell that to ExxonMobil.
Here's what happens. In order for them to capture the
Tell
market,
that to ConocoPhillips.
They have to lower prices.
Tell that to Microsoft.
What you're advocating is giving government in charge of managing.
What I'm saying is that we, the people, that our government is us, first of all. Or it should be. And if it's not, we need to take it back. And we need to take it back by reversing some Supreme Court decisions that said that our government can be bought and sold by corporations and rich people. But our government is, or should be, and is us. And if our government is us, its first job is to provide for the general welfare and domestic tranquility, obviously protect our borders and things like that. You know, the 6 things that are laid out in the preamble of the Constitution and are then later restated individually in how to do that. If our government is us, it has to protect us from the predators. And the predators now are these large transnational corporations that don't give a rat's patootie about you or me or anything else in America. General Electric last year made 53 or 57% of their profit offshore. They made billions. They paid zero in taxes. And yet they used our police departments. They used our fire departments. They used our infrastructure. They used our public education system. They used our court systems. They used our finance systems. They used all those things that you and I paid taxes for, that commons that you and I created. They used that and they didn't pay a damn penny for it. And you're telling me that that's an okay thing? I'm telling you that the only power that can take on General Electric, the only power that can take on Microsoft, the only power that can take on ExxonMobil, which paid no taxes and made hundreds of billions of dollars in profits. In fact, not only did they pay no taxes, they got a $420 million tax refund. The only power that can take them on is organized people, which is what Jefferson and Madison and Hamilton and Franklin and Washington put together, and it's called our government. And it needs to work for us. And I think on that, you and I agree.
No, we don't agree. Absolutely not.
So you don't think our government should work for us?
No, I think that you're creating a monster to kill a monster. The aggregate power of the people that are free, that are making choices together. You're a businessman. If Microsoft gets too abusive, let's open our own damn company, our own company. I'll fund it, Tom.
Yeah, good luck, Bob. Good luck on that. I wish you well.